As the joyous laughter of the evening echoed through the grand villa in Enugu, suddenly a commotion was heard at the gate. A few guests turned to look, their curiosity piqued. Chima excused himself and rushed to the entrance, dreading what he might find. There, in front of the gate, stood Nneka, her face a mask of confusion and hurt. She wore her best clothes, a simple but clean wrapper, a blouse, and her head tied with a matching scarf. But the scars on her face and arms, the marks of the fire that had once nearly taken her life, was still there for all to see. Chima froze, his mind racing. He hadn't invited her. He hadn't even told her about the party. The thought of her mingling with his prestigious guests and them seeing her disfigured face filled him with dread. "Chima, my son," she called out, her voice trembling. "I heard about your celebration and came to be with you." Chima's heart sinks. He had never felt more ashamed. His worst fear was playing out in front of his eyes. The guests were watching, whispering among themselves, and he could feel their judgmental eyes on him. He had to choose, welcome her in or send her away. Years ago, in the small village of Umago, lived a widow named Nneka. Nneka was well known in the village for being hardworking and kind, earning respect from all for her resilience. Her life had been filled with challenges, but she bore them with grace, always with her son Chima by her side. Chima was the light of her life, her only child after the untimely death of her husband. She did everything within her power to ensure he lacked nothing, working days and nights on her small farm to provide for him. One fateful morning, Nneka set out to fetch water from the village stream. Chima, then just 6 years old, was still asleep, tucked safely under the thin blanket in their small mud house. As she filled her water pot at the stream, she felt an odd unease, a strange sense that something was wrong. She quickened her pace on her way back, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to witness. As she approached her house, a thick column of smoke was rising into the sky. Villagers had gathered, trying fruitlessly to extinguish the flame that engulfed her home. Nneka's heart raced. "Chima! Chima!" she screamed, dropping the water pot and sprinting towards the burning house. The villagers tried to hold her back, shouting warning that the fire was too fierce and that she would not survive if she went in. But Nneka was not one to listen to reason when her son's life was at stake. With a strength she never knew she had, she broke free from the hands that tried to restrain her and plunged into the burning inferno. She persisted despite the unbearable heat and suffocating smoke, driven by the desperate need to save her child. She found Chima huddled in a corner, crying out for his mother, wrapping him in a blanket to shield him from the flames. She held him tightly against her chest. The fire licked at her skin, scathing her flesh, but she ignored the pain. With a final desperate push, she stumbled out of the house, collapsing on the ground with Chima still in her arms. Nneka was rushed to the hospital, where she hovered between life and death for weeks. The burns she had sustained were severe, leaving her body permanently scarred and disfigured. But she had saved her son, and that was all that mattered to her. As Chima grew older, Nneka's scars became a source of shame for him. His mother's appearance caused the once lively and confident boy to become withdrawn and embarrassed. He couldn't understand why she looked the way she did, or why other children had beautiful mothers and his was covered in scars. As he entered secondary school, he started to avoid being seen with her mother in public, fearing the teasing and whispers of his classmates. One day, as they walked together to the market, a group of boys from Chima's school passed by. "Is that your mother?" one of them asked, sneering as they pointed at Nneka. Chima's heart pounded in his chest, and without thinking, he shook his head. "No, she's just someone from the village helping me with my shopping," he lied. Unable to meet his mother's eyes, Nneka said nothing, but the pain in her heart was visible. She understood that her son was growing up and that the world could be cruel to those who looked different. Yet she continued to support him, never once mentioning the incident. Chima's academic success eventually led him to university in the bustling city of Enugu. Far from the prying eyes of the village, he reinvented himself, shedding the memories of his scared mother and their small humble home. He studied hard, made influential friends, and climbed the ranks of society, eventually appointed as a minister in the state government. His success made him the pride of Umago, but it also brought about a change in his relationship with his mother. Influential people now surrounded Chima, and he feared that his mother's appearance would cause him embarrassment. Although he loved her, he could not bear the thought of her disfigured face being associated with his success. As a result, Chima began to distance himself from her, avoiding her in public and visiting her only in secret. To celebrate his appointment, Chima organized a grand party at his new villa. He invited all the dignitaries, colleagues, and friends, eager to showcase his success. The night was filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Chima revealed the admiration and respect of his guests, basking in the glow of his achievements. Nneka had heard about the celebration and was filled with pride for her son. She decided to attend, thinking it was a family event. When she arrived at the villa, the security guard stopped her at the gate. "Madam, who are you here to see?" one of them asked, eyeing her suspiciously. "I am Chima's mother," she replied, her heart swelling with pride. The guard hesitated, unsure of what to do. Meanwhile, inside the villa, Chima basked in the glory of his achievements, while guests surrounded him and showered him with praise. Suddenly, a commotion was heard at the gate. A few guests turned to look, their curiosity piqued. Chima excused himself and rushed to the entrance, dreading what he might find. There, in front of the gate, stood Nneka, her face a mask of confusion and hurt. She wore her best clothes, a simple but clean wrapper, a blouse, and her head tied with a matching scarf. But the scars on her face and arms, the marks of the fire that had once nearly taken her life, was still there for all to see. Chima froze, his mind racing. He hadn't invited her. He hadn't even told her about the party. The thought of her mingling with his prestigious guests and them seeing her disfigured face filled him with dread. "Chima, my son," she called out, her voice trembling. "I heard about your celebration and came to be with you." Chima's heart sinks. He had never felt more ashamed. His worst fear was playing out in front of his eyes. The guests were watching, whispering among themselves, and he could feel their judgmental eyes on him. "Mama," he began, struggling to maintain his composure, "I appreciate that you came, but this is not the right time. I have important people here, and I don't want them to see me. Nneka finished his sentence, her voice breaking. Chima looked down, unable to meet his gaze. Please, Mama, let's talk later. I will come to see you tomorrow. Nneka's face fell, but she didn't argue. She simply nodded, turning away with a heavy heart. The pain of her son's rejection was sharper than any physical wound she had ever endured. All right, my son, she said softly, turning to leave. I will wait for you tomorrow. Chima watched as his mother walked away, her shoulders slumping, the weight of rejection heavy on her back. The guards closed the gate behind her, and the whispers of the guest grew louder. As she walked away, one of the older security guards who had witnessed the exchange approached Chima. Young man, he said quietly, do you know what a mother's love is? Do you know what that woman has done for you? Chima stared at the guard, the question piercing through the wall of pride and shame he had built around himself. The memories of his childhood came flooding back. The fire, his mother's scream as she ran into the flames, the months she spent in the hospital, her face bandaged beyond recognition. That night, Chima tried to enjoy the party, but he couldn't shake the image of his mother's sorrowful face from his mind. He sat alone in his room, his mind a whirlwind of guilt and regret. He realized that he had allowed his ambition and desire for acceptance to cloud his judgment and make him forget the sacrifice his mother had made for him. The next morning, before the sun had risen, Chima made his way back to Umago. The journey felt longer than it had ever been before. He brought with him a banquet, hoping to make amends. But when he arrived, he found the door ajar and the house eerily silent. Mama, he called out, stepping inside. There was no answer. He searched the house, but Nneka was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as he ran to the neighbors, asking if they had seen her. One of the neighbors, an elderly woman named Mama Ngozi, shook her head sadly. Nneka left early this morning, she said. She said she was going to the market, but she looked so sad. I tried to talk to her, but she just walked away. Chima's heart pounded in his chest. He knew something was wrong. He raced to the market, asking everyone he saw if they had seen his mother. Finally, a young boy pointed him towards the stream where Nneka used to fetch water. Chima ran to the stream, his breath coming to short gaps. When he arrived, he found his mother sitting on a rock by the stream, staring blankly into the distance. Mama, he cried, rushing to her side. I am so sorry. Please, come home with me. Nneka looked up at him, her eyes filled with deep, unspoken sorrow. Chima, my son, she said quietly, I have always known that my scars were a burden to you, but I never imagined that they would separate us. Without another word, Chima fell on his knees before her, tears streaming down his face. Mama, I am so sorry, he sobbed. I have been so blind, so ungrateful. I forgot what you did for me and what you went through to save me. I was ashamed of you, but it's me who should be ashamed of myself. Nneka's heart swelled with emotion as she reached out to lift her son to his feet. Chima, my son, she said gently, a mother's love is unconditional. I have always loved you, and I always will, no matter what. Chima embraced his mother tightly, feeling the weight of his guilt lifted from his shoulder. He realized that he measured true success not by the wealth he had accumulated or the status he had achieved, but by the love and respect he held for those who had sacrificed for him. From that day forward, Chima never hid his mother away again. He brought her to live with him in the city, where he proudly introduced her to his colleagues and friends. And every time he looked at her, he saw not the scars left by the fire, but the strength, courage, and unwavering love that had brought him back from the brink of death. So, my dear friends, this story is a lesson for all of us. A reminder that no matter how high we rise, we must never forget those who lift us, even if they carry the scars of that sacrifice. Thank you for stopping by. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. And also, share this story with your family and friends. See you in our next video. Bye!